We're coming, and we ain't backing down.
We don't need a bunch of cats in here looking in the mirror.
Everybody just do your job. You understand that?
Hey, will you shut up?
I'm bitterly disappointed with the officiating today.
Guys being dudes.
And they run through our like through a tin horn, man.
Thank you, Lee. Alex, as is the annual rite of passage in college football in September, the price you pay for a hell of a week one is a week two that is always kind of
Well, Richard, I think what you mean to say is that it's focused on regionality. You've got Arkansas State for the first time ever. You've got Texas State playing UTSA. You've got Ohio and West Virginia, which I consider the greater Pittsburgh Bowl between two programs who I knew a bunch of kids from high school who went to. Great journalism school at Ohio, by the way. It's a regional weekend.
Yeah, it's regionality. We love it. All right, we are back.
Iowa State.
Yes, we are back in a midweek episode to taste it as usual. The week two tasting menu. It does not start on Thursday night. Thursday night is Dallas and Philly. Dallas and Philly without Mike Parsons. It's NFL kickoff as things go. Friday is Chiefs Chargers as well in Brazil.
So college football vacating Thursday night in any meaningful way.
Are you going to whine about this all season again?
No, it's not. I'm just going to point it out once off the top so that you'll know that it's how it is, because this is well-trod ground on the program. I think in general, you can notice pretty clearly that the college football TV gods have put fewer good games on Thursday nights as the NFL has leaned into that day more. And this year, it will mostly be the same of that. There was Boise and USF in the first week, Nebraska and Cincinnati the same night.
Well,
it's going to be until like week 10.
Thursday and Friday of week one are considerably different things because there's no NFL.
Correct.
And we go.
Exactly. I think in week 10, we've got a James Madison, Texas State, Georgia Southern App, and UTSA USF, some good G5 games. Week 11, Navy Memphis on Thanksgiving. But otherwise, pretty slim pickings. They do not want to put too many attractive college games up against the NFL, which is the way business is done now. So we do begin, Richard, on Friday night with a game that I think you and I are both really excited about. James Madison at Louisville, 6 p.m. Central Time. That's God's time on ESPN2.
Yeah, this is going to be an interesting matchup because I fear that our friends at James Madison, who I think are going to be really good this year and are underrated, are coming up against it. Against Louisville. I think it's a specifically bad matchup because I also happen to think Louisville is extremely underrated as an ACC team.
I like both of these teams. I think if you like good running back play, especially good running back play from running backs who aren't that big, you're going to like this game on both sides. Isaac Brown for Louisville, big star, not literally big star. He's just kind of a small star. He barely even worked in the EKU FCS game that they played. He had 6 touches all in the first half. The yardages were pretty funny. They were a no gain, a 3-yard play, a 17-yard play, a 31-yard play, a 7-yard play, and a 68-yard play. He is a lightning kind of player. That's representative of the Isaac Brown experience. They also have this redshirt freshman, Sean Boykins, who is I think he is listed as a wideout. He wears 89, but they seem to replace Brown with him in the second half of their FCS game last week, and he did well too. Louisville has a number of running backs on that roster who I think are really interesting players. In James Madison with George Pettaway and Wayne Knight, who was a productive backup last year, tiny guy, but had 109 yards on 10 touches last week. So there will be fun skill position stuff happening in this game. Alonzo Barnett, by the way, started last week at quarterback for James Madison.
Yeah, late in camp, they magically announced that he can go. And so that's very nice. Matthew Sluka is going to be a part of this offense. He had like 6 rushes, or 5 or 6 rushing attempts in the game last week against, I think it was Weber State. Matthew Sluka is part of this offense, and he's going to give them a different dimension that I think is going to be really interesting as they move forward. Again, I don't think it's going to happen on Friday night, but James Madison is a team that both of us are looking forward to this season.
Also on Friday night, Northern Illinois at Maryland, 6:30, God's time, Big Ten Network. I naturally worry about these things because this is the kind of thing that Maryland loses sometimes. Almost happened last year against Charlotte, but I think NIU probably just does not have the offense. Averaged about 4 yards per drop back against Holy Cross last week. So I should prepare for a September Maryland. Be 2-0. Be excited.
The Malik Washington thing obviously is going to be curious. He settled in that game in the second half, but he had some howlers in the first half negatively, some howlers derogatory.
Yeah.
So it's freshman quarterback, first start at home, jitters. You can compartmentalize it, but just pay attention. Pay attention to how big the misses are when he does miss. But again, as you said on Sunday, and I noted, like, he settled in the second half, so it's something to pay attention to. I'm interested with Maryland up front. Northern Illinois is going to test them up front, no doubt about it. Like, they are going to attempt to run the ball, and a lot.
And Maryland's best defensive front players of last year's team and recent teams no longer on the team. A lot of turnover on that defense. So, yeah, going to be a bit of a test. I will compliment home field, by the way. I'm in a pretty Maryland-spirited mood right now in the last week on this podcast. Probably noticed that, in no small part because I think I get more school spirit when a home field football box shows up on my doorstep, as happened last week. The new heavyweight hoodies that home field has out for a bunch of schools, not just mine, are so clean. They're clean to the extent that I wanted to wear it out in 90-degree weather the other day in Southern California, which was not my finest idea. They make no promises that you should wear a weight of that hoodie in 90-degree weather. Homefieldapparel.com for the absolute best in the game. I've been loving it. The football boxes for tons of schools, tons of stuff for just about all of your teams if you're listening to this episode at homefieldapparel.com. Saturday, early slate, Baylor at SMU. This one is on the CW.
Is it really? I did not know it was on the CW. Okay.
Yeah, which, by the way, I think with a lot of people's TV viewing experiences, you'll notice, like, we don't always put the game time or the TV station because you just at least
go
for
in the
me,
app and click on the logos.
Right. I go in a YouTube TV app and click on the logo. I think a lot of people, even with cable, use kind of the sports app screen. You know, Xfinity has that, for example. I'm sure Verizon does too. But this one's on the CW. You will notice that.
I'm in studio on Saturdays, and we sit in the back, and we got a wall of TVs, right? It's one of those like LCD like walls that I can break it out. I can put 4 up, I can put 6 up, I can put 1 up and be the whole wall if I really wanted to. And we get like a feed list, right? And so I go in and I got this little iPad tablet or whatever, and I just plug in, like, whatever, channel 2 is in New Mexico, channel 3 is LS, whatever, and I could switch it around. All this, it is sick. But what happened was on Saturday, Kansas State and North Dakota was something that I had to pay attention to, and I'm like scrambling. I'm like emailing production, like, hey, can I get the feed for this like pulled up? And I got our ace production staff at CBS. They literally, one of the screens, I guess they could do like a web scraper type deal. And they literally went to ESPN Plus, got ESPN Plus, and whatever web scraper they were able to use, and they put it up on our screens. I was very impressed with the back end folks. This is how the other half lives, by the way.
I believe they call it casting, not web scraping. Web scraping makes it sound bootleg, but I believe it's just a standard tech feature that a lot of devices have nowadays.
Hey, I learned I learned something on Saturday. I want to see Baylor against an offensive line that doesn't have approximately 3 professional football players on it, which I do not believe SMU as well. So that's the thing I'm paying attention to. We know what SMU makes up for. Like, SMU is a different proposition in the quarterback run game. You talked about last week that Jackson Arnold in that game Friday night was running between the tackles a ton, right? Mm-hmm. That's something that I don't think you're going to get from Kevin Jennings. Now, you had the opposite problem with Kevin Jennings in that Kevin Jennings will run around you, not through you.
I texted you during that game a couple times. It was like pretty weird that Baylor isn't QB spying, because Jackson Arnold on both design runs and a couple scrambles was just running through them. Dave Aranda gave an interesting answer about that at his press conference this week. One of the Baylor reporters asked him if that had been a consideration to QB spy Jackson Arnold. And Aranda basically said, it was kind of a long answer, so I'll try to distill it, and I had to take some time to make sure I understood it right. Auburn was using a lot of play action, and Aranda's view was that if Baylor had been QB spying Jackson Arnold, then the QB spy linebacker would have had to crash down to play the run action and would have gotten caught in the wash, more or less. And he said he would have become a non-spy. Like, they basically would have just wasted.
Then he's not a QB spy. Then you're playing defense with 10 players.
Yeah, and I thought that was very interesting by Dave Aranda, who obviously forgets more about defense in an afternoon than I will know in my entire life. I think this week, and Dave Aranda indicated this week, that the way that SMU plays offense, this will be more standard. Don't let the quarterback run past you. And I think you will see a more standard quarterback spy type of deal from Baylor.
And this is sort of what we're talking about, right? Like Kevin Jennings runs around you. Jackson Arnold runs through you defensively.
Yeah.
And I think that's the thing to note. The QB spy is a situation where I think a lot of people just look at the TV and say, oh, well, why don't you use a QB spy for a mobile quarterback? But as Dave Aranda is showing you, it's deeper than that. But it's funny enough, Dave Aranda obviously coming from LSU, we also talked about the LSU play at the end of the game there where Harold Perkins becomes an effective QB spy or a mirroring player on the second level is probably what they'd like me to call it. And you see how when you have a player like that can trigger down, you can make some things happen.
UConn at Syracuse, Madison Square Garden. Just kidding, but it should be. Love the Big East. Cuse fought pretty hard against Tennessee last week, but just couldn't protect Steve Angeli enough. Had too many drive killers to keep up in a shootout. I'm actually interested to see if UConn can get into a shootout here. This is not your older brother's UConn. I think they had like 600 something yards last week against 638 yards against Central Connecticut last week, which, yeah, it's Central Connecticut, but they're 1-0 for the first time since 2019.
Central Connecticut State, please put some respect on the.
I think oftentimes it's shorthanded now to Central Connecticut.
Take that up with them.
Yeah. Dominant run game last week. Cam Edwards is a noted good back. So Cuse is a touchdown and change favorite at home, but wouldn't be shocking if Connecticut made this game tough on the Orange.
We'll see. I obviously Syracuse's defense was not what you wanted on Saturday, but I think Tennessee's offensive line specifically made that very, very difficult. Offensive line, tempo, that mix.
Actually, I say touchdown and change, by the way. I think it was 8.5. It's down to 6.5. So people think that UConn can be competitive. Yeah. I'm
curious about Joe Fagnano against a defense that can move around a little bit. He played really well on Saturday. As you said, they racked up a ton of offense in that game. Mobile, by the way, he will pull it and run a little bit. Just something to be aware of. He'll move around a little bit.
He will. This will be interesting. Also, Italian excellence in this matchup. Steve Angeli against Joe Fagnano.
That's real Northeastern vibes going on.
Yes, this is a Northeastern type of deal going on here.
This game is in Syracuse? Yes, in Syracuse. Okay.
Yeah. All right. Iowa at Iowa State. This one, very interesting this year. Not even in the irony-poisoned internet way. Like, I have a hard time making heads or tails of this one, in part, Richard, because of how bleh the Iowa offense was last week against Albany.
I think there is something to that. They didn't show anything against Albany. I get that. But what they did show, man, Mark Gronowski was awful in the first half of that game.
Wasn't good.
Like, he had 2 or 3 of the worst misses that I saw any quarterback have all weekend. Seriously. Now, he settled in the second half a little bit, but what he ended up throwing for like 50 yards. And then I know that they weren't really going to run him, but he only ran for like 30 something yards either. And I get that he's not really going to run against Albany because, you don't really want to use all your QB run game bullets in a game against Albany. Certainly. Okay. I appreciate that. But it wasn't good throwing the ball from him. And if they copy paste Iowa analysis, if they get down, what do they have?
Good question. I think that Iowa State, on the other hand, has filled me with optimism about their offense in the early going. I'm not going to make too much of South Dakota last week, which they did destroy, but looked really good in Dublin against Kansas State. And I think they've started to answer the wide receiver question, or I should say the pass catcher question, because the tight ends have been a big part of the answer so far. They lost 2 awesome college football receivers to the NFL after last year. And the backfilling so far has been nice. They got Brett Eskildsen, who's a wide receiver who barely saw the field last year, has been a money guy for them so far. And they got these 2 tight ends. Iowa State's always going to have tight ends. Gabe Burkle and Ben Brahmer. Burkle on third downs has been a menace. They go at him when they really need something, and he's converted on a couple. I think they've thrown at him 3 times on third and a decent bit, and he's gotten first downs on all of them. how does that work against a program that is built to cover tight ends, a program that is going to have and does have on this team in particular, athletic linebackers, athletic safeties. Like, what does the Rocco-backed Iowa State passing game look like against the Iowa defense? Good question.
One thing to note, Reese Vanderzee still out, by the way. I mean, he's going to miss like a month, I think. So as far as playmakers are concerned, Iowa will continue to be down one of them. And it makes sense. I think Iowa's really high on him as a playmaker coming into the season.
I would like to see Iowa's offense be a little bit more to the effect of what we've talked about it being in the offseason. We'll see if it happens. It was disappointing that they didn't show a little bit more in the Albany game last week, but very interested in this one this week. Illinois at Duke. I'm excited, tempered excitement, but I'm excited about the Darian Mensah thing. It was Elon. I won't be suckered, but he was throwing darts, throwing the ball down the field, far, living in that 10 to 20 yard area. Looked good.
Well, were you talking about explosive past 20 yards, or were we talking about intermediate?
Little
Where
bit
did
of
you
both.
think he was the best at?
A little bit of it did seem like they were throwing a lot of the intermediate stuff, but I think it connected on at least one or two go balls in that game as well. But if you go back and look at it, it was a lot of the throwing it just past the sticks type of deals.
Sure. I have some questions about Darian Mensah from an arm strength perspective, velocity perspective. Maybe it matters against a faster defense. I don't know. We'll see. Duke has a level of explosiveness that I think is going to be really fascinating in this game, juxtaposed to Illinois, who obviously wants to control the clock, run ball control, be physical, all that good stuff. It's an interesting style splash. I don't know which way this goes, to be honest with you. But if Illinois is going to be this playoff dark horse, this Indiana light, like this year, they got to have this one. Got to have this one.
Yeah, 100%. They are 2.5 point favorites on the road in this game,
Right.
which seems about fair to me.
Fair.
Yeah.
They both, Illinois also dispatched with Western Illinois similarly to Duke with Elon last week.
I'd like to see the Mensah experience continue to escalate against what should be an above average Big Ten defense this year. UVA at NC State. UVA really put it on Coastal Carolina last week in a way that did make me raise an eyebrow. One of the best games of Chandler Morris's extensive college football career.
How they did that is interesting to me. And even when they were up by 1 million, Virginia did not exactly run the ball explosively in that game. They were pretty efficient, but not exactly explosive besides what Chandler Morris gave them.
Correct. Scrambles. Yeah.
Scrambles. So that's all right. That is just something to monitor. Something to monitor in this game.
I'm not sure if Chandler Morris threw a single ball more than like 20, 25 yards down the field in that game either. But color me intrigued. I think this is his fourth stop, right? He was at Oklahoma for a minute, TCU, North Texas, now here. I understand that a millionth year fourth school quarterback is not the greatest breakout prospect in the sport, but we're not used to seeing UVA's offense look that good. Cam Ross, the wide receiver from James Madison, looked great too. So it's definitely enough for me to wonder about them going to Raleigh to play an NC State program that, doesn't seem like it's really on the upswing right now. NC State 2.5 point favorite, if you're curious.
Bad vibes, not having a good time at NC. Wait, is this one of those? It's two ACC teams, but it's a non-conference game.
Oh no, I hate it when this happens.
There's one of them in December. Let me pull it up.
I hate it when this happens, and I never notice that it's happening. And then we do the episode, and then someone tells me afterward.
It's this one. Yes, this is.
Oh my goodness, this is terrible.
This is a non-conference. Yes, this is a non-conference game between Virginia and NC State. This is a thing that happens with the ACC every now and then.
It happens. I think it's happened in the Big 12 too. It happens. I don't really like it when it happens, but
no, I don't like it at all.
Happens.
It's bad business. Not bad business, literally bad business.
Yeah, I mean, do something more. I guess it's better than playing an FCS game, but do something more interesting with your non-conference schedules than playing a team that you already play all the time. Utah State at Texas A&M. Richard, I went back and did a little more detailed film review book report on A&M struggling at home with UTSA last week. So Robert Henry for UTSA ran for a lot on these guys, the better part of 200, which made me wonder what was happening there. It really looks like it was just a tackling and scheme thing rather than A&M getting blown off the ball by UTSA. Guys were just not able to get Henry on the ground. Like, he would cut back sometimes to his left typically, and there would just be nobody there. There was just nobody holding the edge. He had a 75-yard touchdown run where both the linebacker and the safety put some of the uglier run fits you'll ever see on tape.
Careful.
And he just goes past them and scores.
Careful on that play, by the way, because if you watch that play, you've got to watch everything that's happening up front there for Texas A&M. When you watch that play, there's a defensive tackle that at the snap, I don't know if he's coached to do this or if he just got the wrong call or whatever, I don't know, but he swims out of his gap. Like,
yeah.
And what happens is Henry then when he gets the ball, Henry presses towards where there is open space. So you've got a linebacker that is taking an angle, shooting through, expecting to have the help. Like, he's not expecting Henry to be able to press towards the right side of UTSA.
No, it's true.
Line of scrimmage. And so because of that, he ends up looking like he's doing.
It's a good point. It was almost as if the linebacker had to pick which of two gaps he was going to fill because of the way the center or the guard and the tackle had been moving. But then the safety just missed him. So I would say that that's probably something that they will get fixed rather than a sign that their defensive front is just going to get pushed around all year. Like, it just was a little bit sloppy all the way around for Texas A&M. So I would declare them fine this week against Utah State. Middle slate Saturday, Idaho State, New Mexico.
Honestly want to see what cool stuff New Mexico is bringing to the table.
Mm-hmm.
It was cool against Michigan. I think it'd be pretty cool against Idaho State. Is Idaho State wearing the fighting taters, or is that Idaho?
I mean, it's probably Idaho, right?
Yeah, yes, it is. Okay, sorry. Yeah. I confused my Idaho's there. One of these, Idaho is wearing helmets that say fighting taters on it, which is just tremendous, but not Idaho State, excuse me.
Yeah, Idaho State, New Mexico, I think might be the real G5 FCS hipster slot of the week. If you just want to watch Jason Eck, who's a real trickster, and Idaho State, which can move the ball offensively. In week 0, they were really impressive, almost beating UNLV in Vegas. I like the way that New Mexico is trying to do business this season in general. They were probably the team that got the most destroyed by the coach carousel in the portal after last season. You lose Bronco Mendenhall to Utah State. You lose Devin Dampier to Utah. You lose a bunch of other guys. Eck comes in here, brings in a bunch of FCS guys to this roster with him, even some lower level guys to this roster. They're doing the Michael Scott thing where they're giving away free tickets to local school kids. They're trying to get people behind the team. Love that kind of thing you got to do there. And they also have done, they made an interesting portal ad. They got DJ McKinney from Sam Houston, who threw the touchdown last week at Michigan on the fumble Ruski or whatever you'd call it, the fake tush push play. I like what they're trying to do. It's an unbelievably hard job, and I'm certainly not going to predict much success this year. But let's see if they can have some fun here against Idaho State.
UAB at Navy could get late early for the Blazers. Navy has, you know how there are some conference opponents that Navy gets and Army gets that are able to handle them, like Tulane has been able to handle the triple option, right? Notre Dame under Marcus Freeman, for instance, has been able to handle the triple option or the offense that Navy and Army run. I should just call it flexible and triple because it's not just flexible and triple anymore. Anyway, UAB has not been able to handle them the last 2 years. They've gotten absolutely crunched. And given what we saw last week against Alabama State, you know, I don't know. We're not filled with optimism here.
The last 2 years, Navy 47 runs for 269 yards against UAB and 42 runs for 227 yards against UAB.
It's what you want.
Sort of classic Service Academy fare in those games. And Navy won them both by many, many, many points. Kansas at Missouri. Let's go. Love this.
Yeah, we had friend of the show, Bill Connolly, on the show. He will be at this game. And he talked about this rivalry actually coming back and being really excited about that. He will be on later in this episode to talk about our main course, for the week on the tasting menu. Kansas and Missouri. I would like to say, Jalen Daniels Hive, we are back. We are back up and running in the run around and do some things version of offense. He's back. It's exciting. It's the thing that I will be looking for in this game against Missouri.
Bo Pribula has my attention. Does he have yours?
Maybe. He had my attention against God, who did they?
Central Arkansas.
Yeah, that was nice, but
yeah.
Let's see.
I understand the context of this situation. He did not seem to clearly win the job over the long camp battle, but the other guy's hurt now. And when he gets going, he is kind of electrifying. He had more of these than I realized at Penn State. That's on me, where he did show off quite a bit of explosion in the run game, like a couple of 50-yard runs last year there. But most of his running work at Penn State was in the design run department, whereas against Central Arkansas, the most exciting stuff was when it breaks down, scramble. It's fun to watch. I hope it works out for him there. Texas State at UTSA, I-35 rivalry game.
Lincoln Perry is the sawed-off white boy of the year this year. Running back.
That's the running back?
Yeah. Yeah, running back for Texas State. He's about 5'9". I'm dubious about if he's actually 5'9". When he breaks off a long run, special stuff to watch a player that doesn't leg it, get it done on explosive run plays. Fun player.
Robert Henry for UTSA, who we just talked about in the context of the A&M game last week. Been a minute since they've had a capital G guy toting the rock. You might remember Sincere McCormick, 2019, 2021, around the beginning of this podcast. That running back and the running game in general was an underrated part of those Frank Harris teams. Might have another proper ball player at that position now in Robert Henry, which would be great for UTSA. Great for Owen McCown as he settles into trying to be one of the better quarterbacks in the American. This one is our Nokian Tires road trip of the week. Obviously, it's literally named after an interstate, so of course it is the Nokian Tires road trip of the week. It's already the case that if you go to the nokiantires.com/SZD landing page, nokiantires.com/SZD tires with a Y, and put in a college football road trip idea, that you'll be entered in a monthly listener drawing to win a set of tires. But it's also now the case that you have the option to go there and get updates on a plan for an SZD and Nokian Tires Championship Saturday watch party in New York City on Saturday, December 6th. That will be a ton of fun. We will share details as they are available, and you should sign up at nokiantires.com/SZD. Ole Miss at Kentucky, Richard.
I'm worried about Kentucky getting separation against Ole Miss's defensive backs. Kentucky does not have what it had at wide receiver core last year. Last year. Obviously, Kentucky did not exactly fill us with optimism last week, despite taking care of business against Toledo. I worry that Zach Calzada is going to be able to get it done here. And it's not like Zach Calzada is a transfer quarterback that Ole Miss's staff has never seen before or won't be able to find ways to stop because they're not able to find comparable film or what have you against him. I don't think it's going to go very well. Let me pull this up real quick. Kentucky is a 10-point underdog here.
Feels light to me.
And especially because, as we know, once Ole Miss gets rolling, they get rolling.
Yeah.
I thought Simmons did some interesting stuff for Ole Miss last week at quarterback. Freshman, he's been there, but not freshman, young, I should say. But he has been there for them at Ole Miss. He's like one of these players that graduated high school at 17 or whatever, and I think has already gotten his first degree from Ole Miss. And one of these prodigy young guys whose dad had him watching film since he was in 6th grade or whatever. So how Simmons, but the thing is with this offense, with Lane's offense, it's always how much do you divorce the system from the quarterback? I don't know. The answer is I don't know. But Austin Simmons did good things last week against Georgia State. And the offense purred. I mean,
yeah, honestly, Jackson Dart will be an interesting data point on that this year. How he does whenever he replaces Russell Wilson. I'm very curious.
He's battling Jameis too.
And Jameis still around. Jameis's brother committed to Florida State, I saw. I also do not think this can happen 2 years in a row for Kentucky, mainly because Dan Key plays for Nebraska now and Barian Brown plays for LSU now. And it was a defensive slog last year, but they did get big plays, key big plays from both of them. And Where's that going to come from this year? They had no downfield passing game that worked against Toledo, so I don't think they are against Ole Miss either. Oklahoma State at Oregon. A little passive-aggressive war of words before this one between Mike Gundy and Dan Lanning. You see that?
Yeah. It will not surprise you that Mike Gundy is not exactly the biggest fan of Oregon's roster construction. I'm paraphrasing here, but Mike Gundy basically said that they paid like $7 million for their roster. Oregon paid like $40 million for a roster. And then in the way that Mike Gundy just be saying stuff, Mike Gundy said that he's heard from coaches that teams should schedule non-conference according to their budgets, their player budgets. Again, paraphrasing, but I just...
Well, okay. And Lanning said,
yes.
Lanning said, well, I'm guessing that UT Martin doesn't have as much as Oklahoma State has.
And basically, Dan Lanning intimated, and again, paraphrasing, Dan Lanning basically intimated, like, y'all broke boys. Like, we got money. We're trying to win a national championship here. Like, we're playing the game, roster acquisition-wise. That is how it is played. So we're going to spend the money. And I think that when Oregon wins this game by like 30 points, you're going to see that, well, yeah, their players are a lot better than Oklahoma State. Again, this is the thing that Oregon, from a roster construction scenario, is similar to last year's Ohio State. It's a talented roster with high school developed players. And then they went and just picked the best players at like pretty much every position in the portal. Now, some of their better homegrown players are going to be the best players on the field. Kenyon Sadiq, talked about him in the preseason Big Ten special. I think he's going to end up being the best tight end in the country. He's going to be an absolute bear to defend. And then up front, Oregon has something, and I'm not talking about Bear Alexander. Amari Washington at nose for them is nuts from a first step perspective on the defensive line.
You liked what you saw from him against Montana State.
I did. And it's got nothing to do with it's got nothing to do with Montana State up front, what they can or can't do. What Amari Washington does, I'm talking about out of his stance. I'm not talking about when he's actually striking a defender, is very, very unique stuff. Pull him up. Tosh Lupoi, Oregon defensive line coach, is this week's minority coach of the week in an interesting schematic spot. That is not a portender predictor of schematic success. It's simply taking a minority coach in a certain spot and saying, that's interesting. Oregon's defensive line, it's Mateo Uyunglele, it's Washington, it's Bear Alexander, it's the pieces that they have up front. Going to be interesting against Oklahoma State. Think it's going to get late early for the Cowboys.
Don't disagree. The Haas Haney thing does stink for Oklahoma State because it seemed like you don't really know based on a couple of minutes in week one, but it seemed like they preferred him. And you could kind of get it. Like the ball does kind of jump out of his hand. And when Zane Flores came in, when he took over full time for him, because I think they were going to use both of them a little bit anyway, they got a little bit more conservative with the shape of their passing game. It's a bit speculative because we didn't see so much of them. But anyway, Troy at Clemson. Just wanted to also give you a chance to weigh in on the other coach war of words this week. How tough for Dabo that he allowed Brian Kelly to cut a wrestling promo.
Yeah.
Which Brian Kelly did. Brian Kelly, one of the more rizless people in the history of the sport, just did cut a pretty good promo. Basically, Dabo said...
Break this one down for me because I was locked in on the Gundy Lanning, but it's one of those things where you see that there was a little tit for tat on social media, but I didn't dig into it.
Yeah, honestly, a lot of chippiness between coaches, social media teams right now. Dabo at his midweek press conference this week graded LSU a 65 and Clemson a 58. Said neither one of us were great, which I guess I agree that LSU wasn't great, but they were good. And in the second half, they were kind of great. I mean, they should have won by 2 touchdowns if not for the officiating review. And anyway, Brian Kelly was like, I guess Dabo's a really tough grader, or maybe he just didn't want to go back and look at the film because of what we did to them in the second half of that game. And that's paraphrasing. That's basically what Brian Kelly said. And it is tough to give Brian Kelly such a layup to sound as cool as he did in that press conference. This is not a guy who is naturally given to sounding cool.
History is written by the victors, Dabo. You know that.
Bowling Green at Cincinnati. I have this one on here because I'm flagging it.
For what?
For Cincinnati to do something really bad that would speed up the Scott Satterfield timeline. I don't think it's going to happen. I don't think it's going to happen. But if there was a 3-touchdown spread game, that could happen this season, that I would look at and be like, I could see it. I could see it here, mainly because I don't think Cincinnati has any downfield pass game whatsoever, or at least I didn't try to last week.
I can't see it. They're not going to need it. I think the key here is Bowling Green not going to be able to move the ball.
Probably not. They did return a kickoff last week.
Well, yeah, I meant on offense. Cincinnati is sick at linebacker, by the way. They got some really, really fun linebackers, guys that are really, really good in coverage. And that's why I think you get into a situation where is Drew Pine going to be able to hit tight window throws?
Yeah. No, Cincinnati has, but they also have a good tight end, Joe Royer. I just really didn't like what we saw from Brendan Sorsby in the opener. They should be fine. There's a reason they're favored by 3 touchdowns, but I just kind of gave it a thought. It feels like the kind of thing that Scott Satterfield would make tenuous. You're probably right. I'm getting carried away.
Yeah, I'm not acknowledging this one. That's the one.
All right, you're not crediting this. That's fine. West Virginia at Ohio. Interesting regional game. They don't play often. It's been a long time.
You saw the run game explosiveness that you wanted from West Virginia, albeit against Robert Morris. So, bucket that one. I think that they're going to be able to do that. Especially, you got to take pressure off because the quarterback situation was in some doubt in camp for West Virginia. Then they settled on somebody, didn't exactly go crazy against Robert.
No, it's Nico Marchiol who's been in and out for them for a while, and it's not that exciting. No, this is the second week in a row that Ohio is going into a P4 stadium with, in my opinion, the more interesting quarterback. Have you swallowed the Parker Navarro pill?
No, I have not watched much Parker Navarro. Cannot say that.
He was stunting on Rutgers last week,
okay.
Spreading the biscuit all around the field. Oftentimes to the same guy, Chase Hendricks, who had 9 catches for them and a lot of run after the catch. West Virginia defense. I mean, this one is not as much of a shot by me to point out, but West Virginia defense needs to be very businesslike here, or they could lose. They are 2.5-point favorites on the road this week. And I think that the Ohio defense, very interesting. They sent the house last week after Ethan Kaliak-Monis. It obviously didn't really work. Rutgers got the ball out and moved the ball fine. But it's going to be an aggressive defense and an offense that I bet is going to score some points. I think that Athens, Ohio, that is going to be rocking for this game. Like, this is the kind of home game MAC atmosphere that was pretty common around like the early 2000s and is less common now. I'm excited to see it. It'll be on ESPNU.
Rabbit atmosphere in Athens. Small spread. Put those two things together. And what do we have, Alex?
It's honestly not even on spread terms. I kind of like Ohio in this game. Ohio is my Dadwater home dog of the week. This one is also inside of a field goal. There seems to be, I think, some justified sentiment that Ohio could win this game. And I think it's going to be electric. I really look forward to seeing this. Thank you to Dadwater, a tequila water with 4 all-natural ingredients, no carbonation, no sugar, no carbs, and gluten-free. They're presenting sponsors of the Sunday Hurry Up. You will see them throughout the year. And yeah, I'm very into this home dog, that being the Ohio Bobcats against West Virginia. Richard, I'm also very into USF at Florida this week. Maybe this might be the most fun quarterback matchup of the week in the entire country.
One of the things that I was a little surprised about was that Florida is actually as heavily favored as they are. Florida's like a 17.5 point favorite in this game. I think what we're really, really going to see is how Florida runs the ball against USF. I think that Boise wasn't really able to, and then the game script got ridiculous, and they weren't really able to try. So how is Florida able to run the ball in this game? And then on the other side, how do they limit Byron Brown? One of the things I didn't like about Byron Brown and USF last week that I think is interesting is, I think I've mentioned this, that they've changed the throwing motion that Byron Brown has. It's like Trebuchet-like. And what it doesn't line up is that USF is a team that wants to go at like mock speed tempo when they're really cooking. But then you've got this quarterback that's like loading it up for a day and a half back there.
Yeah.
And Boise like got really close to jumping a couple of those bubbles early in that game. because you can just time them up.
Yeah. Yeah, it is a bit like cannonball warfare. Like it takes a while for the thing to get loaded. But when it comes out and it comes out good, it does come out.
Yeah.
It does come out pretty. Also, I mean, when he really gets the head of speed and gets moving, as he did a couple times against Boise State, it is a thing to behold.
Yeah, I had somebody text me halfway through that game. It was like, Byron Brown's going to be a hell of a tight end in the NFL.
Yeah.
It's like, Jesus Christ.
Yeah. And look, I hate to say this about a black quarterback, but I don't disagree. I say it progressively. He'd be a great tight end. He'd be a great tight end in the NFL. I understand your question mark about him throwing the ball against an athletic defense and a defense that probably noticed the thing that you noticed about how long it takes him to get the ball out. But overall, USF managed 7 yards per play against a defense that made the playoff last year and had a lot back on that defense. So I don't think it would surprise you as a Florida person if USF bothered Florida here.
I think that USF also, like USF, a couple injuries in that first game. I don't know. There's some deceptiveness to the box, and it's not just a fake punt touchdown. There's some deceptiveness, I think, in the result on Saturday or on Thursday that USF had against Boise. That's not to say that I think it was fake or to say that USF doesn't win that game if you play it 10 times over. But I don't know. You read between the lines a little bit, and maybe it was a little closer than the final score ended up being.
Still in the middle slate here on Saturday. Arkansas State against Arkansas in Little Rock. Richard, on the field, you take on the field first. I think off the field might be more interesting here.
Arkansas is going to crush them. Like, this is a situation where I don't think, if you're Arkansas, like, you don't mess around here. And Arkansas is not a top half of the SEC team. I understand that. But at the end of the day, like, this is a situation where if you're Sam Pittman and this Arkansas staff, if you come in this game and you don't show the we're Arkansas and you're not thing, that's when like serious alarm bells start flashing beyond what we're already worried about Arkansas.
Yeah, I don't disagree. I'm not gonna overdo it with the regional sort of rivalry thing. And I say sort of rivalry because this is the first time they've ever played. And that is interesting. Frank Broyles back in the day would not have it, would not have these teams play. No other Arkansas coach has either. I think this was pretty self-interested on Arkansas's part. They want to be the team of the state. They want everyone united behind the Hogs. I'm sure did not want to create an opening for A-State to gain any kind of recruiting momentum against them. And there's a wholesome element to that. There's also a cynical big brother keeping little brother down element. I do think that people will be fired up for this game. This game will have more juice, more energy around it than your typical 3-touchdown spread Sun Belt versus SEC game. And I do think it's an interesting spot for Jalen Raynor and Corey Rucker, which is a really good quarterback wide receiver duo for Arkansas State. But let's just say it would be a pleasant surprise. It would be cool to watch if Arkansas State could make this competitive. I agree. It would be a pretty tough slog.
Yeah. To the Saturday evening slate, Western Kentucky and Toledo. The L against Kentucky doesn't tamper my spirit about Toledo, but Toledo had a chance to do the Kentucky double. They do not anymore, but can they get one against this Western team?
Good game here. Western Kentucky looks a lot like we thought they would look. Maverick McIver goes back, throws the ball a billion times a game, gets the ball out quick so you can't sack him. Whole big collection of wide receivers. Katie Hutchinson and Matt Henry, the best of them so far. This is a good one. This is very much worth you putting up ESPN Plus while you're watching games on Saturday evening.
Tulane, South Alabama. Tulane. Okay, we did this with Tulane last week when neither of us knew why, and neither of us could figure out why Tulane was just a 4-point favorite against Northwestern, and then they went and absolutely blew the doors off of Northwestern. I'm expecting them to do that again here. I have no doubt that they will.
Yeah, I think Tulane should be okay here. They are at 38, the highest ranked Group of 5 team of the moment in Bill Connolly's SP Plus ratings. You'll hear from Bill, as Richard said, in a little bit. I think it might be worth a little note of caution about the offense. Like that blowout against Northwestern was very turnover dependent. Preston Stone really helped them out in that game. And Jake Retzlaff was clocking like 5 yards per drop back despite only getting sacked once. He's only been the quarterback there for 10 minutes? Like I think it could be really clunky, especially early in the season. And this is the last, what should be a warm-up game for them. And then they have Duke and Ole Miss in succession. They're doing the Cutcliffe circuit. And I think once you get to that series, like Duke Ole Miss, that's one where you probably hope to go 1-1 in those two games. But that only works if you take care of business here. I expect that they will.
Tulane is minus 10.5 in this game as we speak. The most important thing that I saw from Retzlaff is like the running ability is still there. They ran for like 100 yards in that game. And if you're going to be that varied on offense, South Alabama's going to have a bad time. Like a worse time than 10.5 would indicate.
Army at Kansas State. Might not be Army's year. Might not be Kansas State's year.
Something's got to give derogatory in this game.
Yeah.
I really got like, are we worried about Kansas State, or is this just blips on the radar? This is the game where I think you're going to come out of it understanding what the deal is with Kansas State, at least in the beginning of the season. I understand Kansas State, especially under Chris Kleiman, is a team that can be better in November than September, but they haven't been that damn good in September.
Or August for that matter. Army, actually, August is what we're talking about. And this will be the first games of September, I believe, for them.
That's actually really fun.
2 games in August. Wow, you don't get a lot of 2 games in August.
Not. No,
yeah, 2 games in August for Kansas State. Army probably is having a down year. Like we kind of anticipated this. We talked about it on the American preview in the run up to the season. You lose Bryson Daly, you lose a really good running back to Arizona State, a really good linebacker to Georgia. You're losing like the top end of your roster, even in part to the portal, which can happen, and you can't really backfill the same way that you can lose guys. And it looked really bleak against Tarleton. But all of that said, when you're a team like Kansas State and you've been having major defensive problems over the first few weeks of the season, you're probably not stoked to see Jeff Monken and Army rolling into your stadium as the next thing that you see after you can't stop anybody. So interesting enough on a schematic basis to see what happens here. Houston at Rice, crosstown.
I did not actually really get a chance to dig into Rice's offense yet. I think we'll be able to here a little bit. They played ULL last week. Connor Wegman was solid enough in that week 1 game against an FCS opponent for Houston.
Arizona State at Mississippi State. Feels like this is probably going to be a big spot for Mississippi State. At home, at night. I think they probably, if I were to psychoanalyze them from afar, have taken that Mississippi or the Southern Miss game last week and tried to build a kernel of optimism around that. And now you have a playoff team coming in here, I think as roughly a touchdown underdog for Mississippi State. Sure, you have my attention here.
The touchdown underdog aspect
might be light.
Might be light. Well, I don't know. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying there's an alarm bell situation about Arizona State here. Remember, Arizona State only beat them by a touchdown last year. And that was the worst team in the SEC.
Yeah, but that was before Arizona State got going.
Figured itself out. Sure, I get that. But I'm paying very close attention to, in a post-Cam Scatterbo era, if Arizona State is able to run the ball against, if they're not able to run the ball that effectively against Mississippi State's defensive line, when they get into the teeth of it in the Big 12, we know what the Big 12 is as a league. We know that there's a chew spit out situation in that league, and there's a parity in that league that's really cool. Arizona State is the highest ranked team in the Big 12 right now as we speak. I think they're 10th in the AP poll. I got to look out the new AP.
Yeah, a little bit of 2024 holdover going on there. A lot of bit of that, but yeah,
it's still in the mix. So we'll see here. But I'm saying I have an alarm bell here that goes off when I see Arizona State is only a touchdown favorite against Mississippi State, albeit on the road. But I don't love that. I do not love that at all.
I am interested in the pass game for State. Brandon Thompson from Oklahoma and Texas had a nice little first outing for them last week. They got this tight end who was there last year too, productive player Seydou Traore. He's from London, the England one, not the Ontario one, who's been an important part of that offense and looks like he still will be. Anybody
defaults to the Ontario one.
I mean, you never know, Richard. You never know. You never know. Blake Shapen did throw a really bad, bleak pick last week against Southern Miss.
That was rough.
Probably harder to get away with that in this game. You need your millionth year quarterback to be sharper than he was to beat Southern Miss last week. Georgia Southern at USC. Did you dig at all, Richard, in the last couple of days into the USC FCS warm-up last week where they got 11 yards per play?
I
can't
say that I put USC Missouri State up on the review.
I say FCS warm-up. Actually, it's now an FBS warm-up.
It's an FBS warm-up. Wow, FBS erasure there. No, I cannot say that I was digging deeply through that one.
The offense was perfect. I mean, it was one of the most dominant offensive, basically, scrimmages that you'll ever see, and they played Longstreet in the second half. USC should, by all rights, be completely fine against Georgia Southern. You just kind of imagine what if, as 4 touchdown dogs, if Clay Helton were to come in here and really even come close to beating USC.
Oh, it'd easily be the funniest result of the weekend.
Ain't gonna happen. Ain't gonna happen.
Results all season.
Ain't gonna happen. Yes. And I don't think that USC has any interest in firing Lincoln Riley. We would revisit that in the event of them losing as 4 touchdown favorites to Clay Helton. I don't think it's gonna happen, but just in case it happened, it's on the tasting menu. So we can say we talked about it. Vanderbilt at Virginia Tech. Actually, Richard, we haven't really had a chance to weigh in on Virginia Tech yet, which played on Sunday afternoon after the hurry up. And not, in my opinion, very well.
No, they're going to have some problems. They just miss Bashal Tootin. They miss Bashal Tootin a lot from explosive play standpoint, from a run the ball standpoint. Kyron Jones was back there struggling in that game. I did like that Donovan Green played well in that game. Donovan Green's a player who's battled some injuries. It is a transfer in from Wake. So
receiver.
It's nice receiver. It's nice that Green played well. Also, I didn't realize there was a Green Brothers situation, but
I didn't realize that either. I saw them mentioning the other Green, Aiden, and I was like, oh, is that a nickname for Donovan? No,
they're not actually brothers, but they are both spelled the same way with 3 E's. So you would be led to believe this is not that bad. It's not the Devin Hester Jr. son of that Devin Hester, but still a returner, and it's certainly not Eddie Robinson Jr. son of not that Eddie Robinson head coach of Brent.
The one thing about the run game that I will note, Richard, I agree they missed Tootin. Terrion Stewart did not go in this game. I don't even know if he dressed out, but he's the Bowling Green transfer running back who we had heard was booted like the week before. That was being reported in the Virginia Tech press. They could really use him back and good because I think he is a good player and he comes to them in a similar way to how Tootin did a few years ago, just productive lower level back. I think Tootin was FCS, Stewart Mack. Like you need something there because they had basically nothing to speak of. They ran for 3.6 per carry, sack adjusted in this game. And also didn't feel, this was, probably pretty predictable. I think that Drones only got sacked twice, but they couldn't really pass protect him consistently. I think you get an easier set of edge rushers just about every week going forward to deal with than Stewart and Thomas from South Carolina, but you need better. And you also, the pick that Kyron Jones threw, the first of, I think, 2, he threw a second one later.
He threw two.
Was one of the worst of the week. Could have been basically fair caught at the goal line by one of 2 defensive backs. He's been around a long enough time that you don't like it. And that was on 3rd down, too, where all he had to do was eat it, and they would have kicked a field goal.
I will say this for Virginia Tech. I did think that, especially on the safety, for instance, right? Like you saw Virginia Tech has a little something up front. I think Emmett Laws and Elijah Fall, their tandem there on the defensive line, it got a little something on the defensive line. Little something.
Yeah, actually, that was the only good thing that came out of Kyron Jones. Kind of his best contribution to offense was throwing that pick that got run out to the 1, and then it led to the immediate safety of Lenore Sellers. Generating points. And possession, when you think about it.
And possession.
That's right. How did he play? Vandy obviously beat these guys in Nashville last year. Vandy played a warm-up game last week. What's the line on this, Richard? Feels toss-uppy. Yep, 1.5.
1.5. Yeah.
Tech by 1.5 at home. Feels toss-uppy.
Vegas agrees. A game that does not feel toss-uppy at all. Louisiana Monroe at Alabama. You know why it's on here? It would be really funny if it happened again. That's not why. That's not why. It's on here because I talked with Matt Stahl, Alabama beat reporter for AL.com. I enjoyed the conversation. It was about 30 minutes on Sunday for an episode on Monday, just about sort of how toxic things are feeling around Alabama and what people are specifically upset about in addition to all the losing. But you weren't on that show. You were traveling to Chapel Hill. I just wanted to give you an opportunity if you have anything you want to say about Alabama or ULM for that matter. I think we'll save the Alabama stuff, or else I will save my Alabama stuff for a couple weeks from now. I will say there was a good episode from Matt. The question is, when we get next week and Alabama has Wisconsin, that's when we'll have a true discussion, I think, about Alabama moving forward. Because it's apparently going to be a losable game now if Alabama's going to play like it did on Saturday. I thought the offense was the thing with Alabama on offense specifically was that it's one of those things where one thing was happening poor on like every offensive play that then sunk the whole ship, right? Like you've got one play where Ty Simpson, this was in the red zone. Like Ty Simpson has a throw that's on time to Ryan Williams, and Ryan Williams reaches out with one arm to try to catch it. And this is just a slant. Tries to catch it with one arm and then drops it instead of a two-hand catch. It was frankly a nicely thrown ball by Ty Simpson quickly on time. It's something like that. It's like, oh, Ty Simpson's trying to uncork the grenade and throw deep to, I believe it was Ryan Williams again, and Ryan Williams slipped on a wet field. It was Caden Proctor getting beat. Caden Proctor had a shocker on Saturday, by the way. It's Caden Proctor getting beat and then the play going to hell because of that. It's like very little things, but that's where it adds up to if you are a person who wants to do they ain't making them like they used to in the post-Saban era, like that's what I think you're really talking about. Because in the do your job sort of mantra, which is certainly a vote because of what happened to Bill Belichick on Monday night, like the Alabama's was cut from the same cloth there as far as like that's what the process is, right? Everybody doing their 111 and it comes together for a team that's really good because nobody's trying to do too much. But I think that's the real problem as far as I'm concerned with Alabama, which is not to say anything about the Lopes on defense and then, man, I get that Kalen DeBoer is kind of under the cosh here, but like, did you see the press conference where they asked him, hey man, you said that it was a great week of practice against Florida State, and then they went out and looked like that on Saturday?
Yeah. And he was like, did I say that? Did I say that? Is that how I sounded?
Like, buddy,
when I saw that exchange, all that I was thinking about was this conversation with Matt Stahl at splitsindoor.com about all of the little things that people locally have been on him about, like moving practice to the morning. So how are they going to play in the heat? Or having an ice cream truck at a practice, or this sort of the local kerfluffle over whether or not Alabama has control over apartment buildings that overlook the practice fields. And now people are looking at practice again.
Which Alabama will tell you they never did.
They will tell you they never did. Correct. Like I'm sure you saw the viral message boardy stuff going around about players getting fast food to the team hotel before the game. Like this is the kind of stuff that only happens here.
Yeah.
And who knows if it was even true, but I'm trying to paint the picture. And when I was listening to that press conference, it was like, Kaylee, you just have to give, it's on me to make us better. It's like, you know what? It's on me to make us better. It wasn't good enough. We're going to be better. Just do yourself the PR favor going forward. Ultimately, it is all about the W's, but do yourself a favor.
Like little things. There was some Zapruder of like Alabama players on the field before the game with like headphones and the phone and all this type of stuff.
Yes, Caden Proctor doing pass sets, and there's like people pointing out he's got his phone in his hand, which like, yeah, when I go for runs, I have my phone in my hand.
No, but like
people do that. People do that.
Like it's all the like, again, it's kind of similar to on the field. It's not one big thing. It's death of 1,000 cuts kind of thing that have the situation like this. They're going to win this game by 40 points. If they don't beat Wisconsin, or if they don't really show against Wisconsin, I serious alarm bells. I can understand
because who do they play after that, Richard?
The Georgia Bulldogs. So it's
tough.
let's see here.
UCLA at UNLV. This one potentially juicy, in my opinion. UCLA on the road is favored by 2.5. A lot of that going around, that kind of game this week.
We love it, by the way.
No, it's good. Nico had no chance whatsoever against Utah. Do you agree?
Yeah, but I actually think he was better than I think it really looked. I think he was like 11 for 22. I think
he wasn't terrible. It's just they were on him all game.
Yeah, and there is also a fact of like a lack of snaps that UCLA's offense was able to have because Utah is marching 9 minutes, 90 yards in 20 plays, for instance, and keeping you on the sideline. But I think Nico did some things. There were some drops that I think really, really hurt them and hampered them, that Nico's putting the ball on the money and is just not catching the ball. So I think that Nico was not as bad as the stat line looked. I think it's fair to say.
I think we would have more of a DEFCON situation here if UCLA cannot block UNLV. It's fine that you can't block Utah. That's a mismatch. They're way better than you. But this is your Dan Mullen roster flip, G5, UNLV, and Nico better have time to throw the football, and then it better be caught by some people. And they better be able to score in this game because UNLV is probably going to score in this game. They might have another guy at wide receiver, by the way. They lost Ricky White after last year. They've got this receiver, Jaden Bradley, who is the leading receiver in the country in the early going. Obviously, that includes a week 0 to help his case there. I'm just pointing out 2 very good games, 2 back-to-back 6-catch, 130-ish yard games. This is a guy who had been on the team before, hadn't put up big numbers. Looks like a breakout guy for them. All I'm pointing out. Third school. He was at Pitt, then Charlotte. Now he's having a breakout. I think UNLV probably going to get some points here, so UCLA is going to have to do that as well.
Stanford, BYU. Off a bye week. If Stanford doesn't have anything, this is, man, this could get ugly.
Stanford, I wanted to point out that Stanford is a 19-point dog here, despite playing a quarterback who is a true freshman and wasn't supposed to be even in BYU's top handful of quarterbacks this year. And you're a power conference program dogging by 18.5 on the road.
He also, Bear Bachmeier did not do anything. I would complimentary. They won the game by 70 points. But Bear Bachmeier did not do anything in that game. They just ran the ball. They ran the piss out of the ball that game. They ran for 400 yards.
No. Also, Bear Bachmeier, by the way, was going to Stanford. That was the plan for him. I think he left during spring ball.
Yeah, after the Troy Taylor thing.
After all of that stuff. Yeah. So, literally a quarterback who, when I say he wasn't supposed to be one of BYU's top handful of quarterbacks, I actually mean he just wasn't supposed to be one of BYU's quarterbacks, period.
Quite literally.
And then became a BYU quarterback because of all of the happenings at Stanford.
This is also funny because Stanford gets one of the passiest teams in the country in week 0. And then now in week 2 is getting, at least for last week, one of the most run-focused teams in the country, at least last week. Now, I don't know if Bear Bachmeier is going to be asked to do a little bit more in this game, but, Stanford's getting the full spectrum here.
Yeah. San Diego State at Washington State. So I've got a mea culpa this for the second year in a row. I feel awful about this. I feel like I'm jinxing him.
Here. Incredible stuff.
In 2024, I went on our Pac-12 preview show and I was like, Wazoo's quarterback is going to be this FCS transfer, Zevi Eckhouse. I was very excited about it. Jewish guy. I thought this was going to be awesome. He was going to be the guy. He did not wind up winning the job. It was John Mateer who became the quarterback and then obviously had a good year, moved on to Oklahoma. But this year, Wazoo was really acting like Zevi Eckhouse was going to be the guy. He was doing all the spring ball media availability, every preview, magazine, depth chart that you could find, projection of Washington State was that this guy was going to be the quarterback. It was his time. And then apparently in the waning days of fall camp, they moved it out on him again. They gave the job to Jackson Potter. So Zevi is a backup again.
You're 0 for 2 here.
Next year, I'm going to be projecting Zevi Eckhouse to be the starting quarterback for Washington State. And we'll see if I'm right. even if he's not on the team anymore by that point, which I'm kind of guessing he's not, given the way that this is going. Also, not to say that we won't see him, because their offense did not move the ball against Idaho. They had no running game of any kind, and that didn't help Potter. But my guess is that they would have preferred for Zevi to win the job, the guy who had the great bowl game and who was spending the whole offseason as the heir apparent, but didn't work out that way. San Diego State, meanwhile, FCS opener last week, they were playing Stony Brook, but they allowed 2 yards per play, very small number, and they scored 42 points, and Jaden Donegal at quarterback looked good. So it'd be nice to see San Diego State sort of get on the upswing this year in this future conference matchup.
All-name team Lucky Sutton showed out in that game, by the way.
Sounds like a cigarette, a Lucky Sutton.
A Lucky Strike is the what you're looking for there.
Yeah. And to close out the night, for those of you with very specific football tastes, Sam Houston at Hawaii. A Hawaii that may have been mostly benefiting from Stanford's situation in week 0, now that we've seen week 1 from them as well.
Yeah, Hawaii did not exactly acquit themselves against Arizona, which I was a little surprised about. Michael Ahado is like injured. He's a walking boot. He is in a walking boot after he re-injured that right ankle, right foot, whatever, in the game against Arizona. And they got, I think sort of spiritually shut out, if you want to call it that, against Arizona. They lost 40-6 last week with 2 field goals in that game. So, and El Hado exited the game. So they got some problems there, does Hawaii on offense.
Richard, there's one other game being played on Saturday night. Let's phone a friend.
This week's main course with the great man, Bill Connolly, ESPN's Bill Connolly. Bill Connolly got a little book. It's book launch day as we record this. Before we get into the game of the week, congrats on the launch today, Bill.
I appreciate it. We'll see how this goes. I don't know if people buy books, but we're gonna give it a try.
The book is called Forward Progress: The Definitive Guide to the Future of College Football. It's written by our pal Bill Connolly. But let's get into it. Game of the week: Michigan and Oklahoma. Bill is the proprietor, I believe, of the predictive analytics system SP+. Before we get into kind of the nuts and bolts on the field about the game, what does SP Plus say about what Michigan and Oklahoma did last week, and what does it project going into this game? I believe Oklahoma is, as we stand, a 5.5 point favorite for the big one this weekend.
Yeah, SP Plus sometimes it'll react pretty significantly to just blowing out bad teams, and the reason it does that is sometimes that means very important things. It means that you look the part of a team that could blow out bad teams. So there are some overreactions in there. Sometimes we'll see exactly how things play out. But OU jumped all the way to 7th in SP Plus because they just handled their business last week like they were supposed to. Michigan found out what it's like to play a Jason Eck team. In that even if you win by blood, it's going to be super annoying, and they're going to come up with some funky things, and they're just going to make you work harder than you really want to or think you should. But all told, the defense looked fine. Underwood, starting off with a true freshman, Underwood wasn't spectacular, but he was solid. Made some throws, threw a block that everybody loved. So I think, where did they? Michigan jumped. No, that's right. They got Jason X, so they fell a smidge. They're 15th right now. And OU's 7th, so that makes the projection OU by 5.7, which is almost exactly on the line at the moment.
Bill, last week, Bryce Underwood, the numbers were fine, and no one is, it's not like one of the most memorable debuts you've ever seen, but it was totally fine. Richard said something on the hurry up that I was sort of slightly rolling my eyes at, but then I went back and watched it, and I totally get what he was saying, which is that when he checks the ball down or he throws a little screen or a swing, it just looks a little different. Like it's exactly where it's supposed to be. It's probably the least sexy part of good quarterback play is like leading a running back by like 30% of his body weight shifting in the proper direction when the ball goes there. But it seemed like he actually did that pretty much perfectly a bunch of times in that game. I was wondering, from what you saw of him in his debut, what you were most interested in about Bryce Underwood, or if there was nothing interesting and it was just a chance to work out some kinks.
No, he's a real thrower of the football. Like that's certainly that does jump off a little bit. That can make such a big difference. Not to Mizzouify this thing, but I did notice with Bo Prabula in his debut the other day, not an incredibly strong arm, but guys always caught it on the run, like you were saying. One of the deep balls, maybe not, but for the most part, he just reached out and placed the ball. You see a decent amount of that with Underwood, but you don't become the number one prospect in the country if you don't also have a cannon. So I think we checked all those boxes. Physically, he's what he was supposed to be. The throwing of the block thing, we always kind of make a big deal out of stuff like that, but it does show he knows what he's doing and he's not afraid to. He realizes he's playing football and that you have a role to play in football. So that was all good. We didn't learn a single damn thing about how he might handle the first spectacularly hostile environment of his career. And that is one thing about Owen Field. That place gets really, really loud when it has a reason to. That's maybe Lincoln's probably louder, I guess, but Norman was when it's shrill enough that you have to grab the chair in front of you for a minute because it feels like you're losing your balance. That is a different kind of place to try to operate. And maybe he'll pass all those tests exactly the same. But it's just one of those things that we don't know you can do it until you show you can do it. And that's going to be a test he has to pass.
Bill, it's not just the environment that he's going to have to go against. He's going to be going against the preeminent mad scientist of college football defenses, Brent Venables. And I do not think this is going to go well for the young man, Bryce Underwood. I'm sure he'll make a play or two just because he's an absolute freak show physically, but I think Brent Venables and Oklahoma's defense are going to seriously have something for him with the looks that they're going to do, both pre-snap and post-snap, to confuse him. The all-out pressure that they're going to bring. There are going to be times when Brent's just going to send the house and make Bryce Underwood beat him. I'm interested in some of the physical matchups that Bryce Underwood's going to go. Eventually, they're going to probably try to run his own read off of R. Mason Thomas. How's that going to work? R. Mason Thomas is an incredible player out on the edge. I was really impressed, and this is kind of where I want to go with this. How is Michigan going to be able to take pressure off of Bryce Underwood? Because Justin Haynes was fantastic on Saturday night. Justice Haynes was really, really good. Ran for about $150, a little bit more than that. He's going to have to get going in this game as well. Yeah, no, that was going to be my answer. Was the skill core for Michigan heading into the season was almost, to me, a bigger question mark than the quarterback position, because we already saw them win a couple of really nice games without any quarterback play whatsoever last year. So really the bar is extremely low there, but it was low there in part because they did have a couple one pretty good running back as well. And he was able to do his job at least a little bit and make sure that that at least the defense had a full field to work with. So, that's your answer, I think, is, Justice Haynes looked really good. Obviously, there's an upgrade in defense here as well with OU, but being able to run the ball and just being able to know that your defense isn't going to give up 38 points and you don't have to take any chances. I know what Michigan lost from last year's defense, but I thought people were really kind of overreacting to how are they going to operate? They're going to fall off pretty significantly. No, I don't think they are. I think they've still got a whole heck of a lot of talent on defense, and this is still going to be a top 10-ish kind of unit. So if I'm right and it is top 10, then the game will be kind of at least in a spot where they can wait on Underwood to make a couple plays. As long as if he's throwing pick sixes or whatever, then that's a completely different story. But if they're able to just settle for the occasional 3 and out, the occasional 4 and out, just make a couple passes and keep the field position game within balance or within reach, then they can at least stick around in the game for a while and then hope to try to make something happen in the later stages. But yeah, I think that's your answer, is just what we saw last week is they can run the ball. And what we saw last year was that they can defend. And even though they gave up 17 points to New Mexico, it was a funky 17. I didn't see anything fundamentally wrong with the defense at all.
Bill, Oklahoma changed a lot over the offseason too, and changed in high-profile ways. Not to lie to the audience and pretend that I paid a great deal of attention to what they were doing against Illinois State last week in destroying them, but one of the things that I noticed when I was going back through the extended highlight cut and looking at the box score and trying to dig a little bit more deeply into it is that Jaden Ott did not really play. It sounded like he was not especially involved in practices leading up. They hadn't said that. So when he only came in I think the fourth quarter and ran the ball single digit times in that game, and carried it once and played four downs, it was a little surprising. Venables says he's going to play more, but was there anything from Oklahoma's profile other than that in their first game that raised your eyebrow one way or the other?
Yeah, that was the main thing. And I mean, that is something, assuming that was injury related or whatever. I mean, Jaden Hott gets hurt. That is certainly part of his history.
The ankle was nagging last year at Cal, and he even said that the mismanagement of the ankle injury that he had last year was the reason the reasons he left Cal.
Well, I mean, I guess they managed it pretty well. He didn't take on much of a load, but that is something to kind of watch for moving forward. Now, I mean, the guys, Torrey Blaylock, 5.5 yards a carry, that was all fine. I mean, there was nothing to really worry about, I don't think. But I am really, really curious about the OU offensive line in this game. As much attention as Mateer gets, he looked great. Keontez Lewis looked great. Like all the passing game was awesome. But the warning sign for OU this year is that even at last year at Washington State, Mateer got hit a lot, and part of that was on him for running around and trying to make plays.
Yeah, he seems to like that. Yeah.
Right. And that is really, I'm not a big, everything's bigger and stronger in the SEC, but it is bigger than what Washington State played last year. And that is something they're going to have to really, that's the fact that the offensive line didn't really get massive upgrades and needed it because that was the worst OU line since the 1990s. The fact that we don't quite know about the OU offensive line and the fact that Mateer can get into, I got to make a play on every single down mode for the season as a whole, that's a problem. And it could be a problem if Michigan's defensive front is as good as I think it is. So that is going to be a big part of the game. Maybe just the passing elements that they brought with them. There is still kind of a version of the Texas high school offense that works and scores a lot of points in college. And maybe Arbuckles is it, and it'll even work against top 10 defenses. But yeah, they didn't completely solve those problems. And if Mateer gets hit too much, that's going to be an issue. If not in week 2, then in every week thereafter.
No Jayshon Barham for the first half. Right. The targeting rule was upheld last week. I think Michigan protested that a little bit, but it is being upheld. Bit of a homecoming for Sharon Moore as well, coming back to Oklahoma. That's an under the radar thing here. Bill, we could talk about the suspension and all this sort of stuff that's coming for him over the next 2 weeks. I think it is after this game. But
it's a good coincidence that it worked out that way.
Yeah, it's crazy how it worked out that way, isn't it? Where are you at on Sharon Moore? I'll ask the corresponding question with Brent Venables, frankly. But where are you at with the Sharon Moore of it all here as we begin in year 2? To me, this is a found money year for Michigan. I mean, just see what Bryce Underwood can do and can't do. I talked to some people in the building who were like, during camp, it's like, we got to make sure that Bryce Underwood is comfortable kind of making mistakes, right? So this to me is very much like a betting in year for Bryce Underwood. It is what it is. Go out there and cut it loose and make some plays.
Yeah, that was when they were projected like 8th or something in SP Plus. That was the one that was making me uncomfortable because number one, I don't like, as you were suggesting, I don't think they have to be 8th this year. They can kind of make their mistakes and learn and grow and whatnot. But I think with Moore, obviously the way he saved himself at the end of last year, or I should say the way he kind of bought a mulligan with the way last year ended. That was immensely helpful for his just general stock. The fact that they beat Ohio State and Bama while the quarterback position was actively, sabotaging the team. That was, I think, really, really big, and just kind of reminded everybody like the bar, like the upside still here is pretty good. All they need is a decent quarterback, and they'll be pretty good. I think that's where we're at. Like, obviously, I wouldn't advise going 5-7 or something crazy, but they're not going to. As long as they just finish this season with being super crazy optimistic for 2026 because the quarterback improved and so on and so forth. Yeah, I think they're fine. I didn't see anything last year to suggest he's the next Jim Harbaugh, but I didn't see a guy that needs to be fired immediately either.
Last thing from me, obviously, Brent Venables in Oklahoma are changing some things up. It's sort of the backroom staff. That was the permeating thing through the entire offseason. Jim Nagy in. We're going to fix some things on the back end staff. We're going to bring some people in the front office and all this sort of stuff. And we're going to let Brent Venables coach. I think Oklahoma has a chance to prove that at least in as much as you can put stock in a September result, that process has worked in air quotes with this game, as far as I'm concerned.
I agree to an extent because I agree in that, like, if they win this, they beat Temple. Auburn at home. I mean, who knows about Auburn this year?
Sure.
But we'll say like they're in a really good position to start 5-0 if they win this game, and that's going to be like a round of good press and good feelings. This schedule is stupid, though. And even if they play at a top 15 level this year, they're going to go like 8-4, maybe 9-3. If they can get to 5-0, then maybe that's kind of a sure sign that they're going to at least get to the 9-3 territory, and that's clearly a step forward. But it is going to be so hard to judge Venables with this schedule. Especially if Mateer does start to suffer wear and tear about halfway through. So it's been such a strange thing. They let him kind of do a hard restart on the program as a whole. First 2 losing seasons of the 21st century for Oklahoma. And like new athletic director, the long-term AD's retired. Like it's a really weird spot to be in. I don't exactly know what to expect, but I do. Obviously, if you start 5-0, if you get past Michigan and Auburn, that does earn you a little bit more goodwill. And then, go 4-3 down the stretch. I guess that was still a really good year.
Bill Connolly, thank you so much for joining us, not just here, but on our subscriber show this week. All the best with the book. It's really good. Forward Progress. I've already read it myself. I urge you all listening to get a copy. It's a unique book in the annals of what's going on with college football books, like made with love, not with doom, but while recognizing the sports problems. I just thought it was great. Thanks for being with us, Bill.
Absolutely. Thank you.
All right, that'll do it for the week 2 Split Zone Duo tasting menu. Alex, I will see you Sunday morning.
Sunday morning, the week 2 Sunday Hurry Up presented by Dabwater coming at you. We'll go through everything that we found interesting this weekend. I look forward to it, my friend.